My name is Ava Whitmore, and the day my stepmother told me she had sold my house to teach me respect, she thought she had won. But months later, I stood in probate court and personally handed the judge the flash drive that exposed her fraud while Jerry's composure shattered in front of everyone. I watched the gavel fall as her illegal sale was declared void, and she was barred from my father's estate. So tell me, before we begin, where are you watching from? Write your city and state in the comments. It was 8:17 a.m. in my glass-walled office on Wacker Drive when my stepmother decided to detonate my morning. Chicago looked metallic outside, cold river, colder skyline, and I remember thinking the city had never felt so indifferent. I was reviewing quarterly projections when my assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Whitmore, Jerry Lawson is on line 2. Of course she was. I pressed the blinking button and leaned back in my leather chair. "Good morning, Jerry." Her voice came syrupy sweet. "Ava, I hope I didn't catch you at a bad time." "You never do anything accidentally," I replied lightly. A small pause, then she exhaled like she was about to deliver a punchline. "I sold your house." Silence has weight, it settled between us. "My house?" I asked, glancing automatically at the framed photo on my credenza, my father standing in front of the Lake Forest colonial he'd built before he married her. "Yes," she said. "Well, technically it was in your father's name, and as his widow, I made an executive decision." I stood slowly and walked toward the window. "You made an executive decision," I repeated. "To teach you a lesson about respect," she added, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "You've been very difficult lately," I laughed softly. "Difficult? You undermine me at every turn, question every choice. That house was becoming a symbol of your attitude. It was my childhood home." "It was a property asset," she corrected sharply. "And now it's liquid." My fingers tightened around the phone, but my voice stayed even. "You didn't have my authorization." "Oh, sweetheart," she sighed, "I don't need it." There it was, the performance of authority. The tone she'd perfected during my father's final year, measured, maternal, utterly false. "You're at work, aren't you?" she continued. "Probably in one of those power suits. You think because you're a corporate VP at 32 you can challenge me." "I don't think," I said quietly. "I verify." She ignored that. "The buyers close in 10 days, it's done." 10 days, my gaze drifted to my desk drawer. Inside it was a cream envelope, thick, sealed with the name Alden and Pierce, estate attorneys embossed across the flap. It had arrived 3 months ago, shortly after my father's funeral. I hadn't opened it, not because I was afraid, because I was waiting. "You sold it for how much?" I asked. "That's not your concern." "As if you sold it below market value." Her voice hardened. "Watch your tone, Ava." I smiled at the skyline. "I learned it from you." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "You always thought you were smarter than everyone else. Let's see how smart you are without that house to hide behind." "You did this to hurt me," I said. "No," she replied smoothly. "I did this to remind you who's in charge." The audacity was almost impressive. "Send me the sale contract," I said. "I don't owe you documentation." "Oh, the estate transparency." She clicked her tongue. "The estate belongs to me." "Does it?" I thought. Aloud I said, "Thank you for informing me." "That's it?" she asked, almost disappointed. "No hysterics. I have a board meeting in 12 minutes. She hesitated. "You're taking this very calmly." "I find rage clouds judgment." "And you think you can outmaneuver me?" she pressed. "I don't think," I repeated gently. "I verify." A beat of silence. "Good luck, Ava," she said finally. "You'll need it." The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly. For a moment I let myself feel it, the sharp, almost metallic slice of betrayal. Not just the house. The audacity, the assumption that I would fold. I walked back to my desk. Opened the drawer, lifted the envelope. My father had been many things, complicated, distant, stubborn, but he had never been careless. If he sent something through his attorney, it wasn't sentimental. It was strategic. I traced my finger along the sealed edge and whispered, "What did you leave me, Dad?" Outside, the city glittered like steel. Inside, something colder settled into place. Jerry thought she'd sold my house. She had no idea she'd just triggered a war she wasn't prepared to fight. And as I slid a letter opener beneath the seal, I decided something very specific. I wasn't just going to stop the sale. I was going to expose her. That was the moment my campaign began. And I had no intention of losing. That same afternoon, I drove north from downtown Chicago to Lake Forest, my father's unopened letter resting on the passenger seat like a quiet accomplice. The sky hung low and gray over Sheridan Road, the kind of winter afternoon that makes the lake look endless and unforgiving. I didn't turn on the radio. I needed silence. I needed clarity. Alden and Pierce still occupied the same brick building it had for decades. Brass plaque, frosted glass door. The faint scent of polished wood and old paper the moment you stepped inside. Mr. Charles Alden had been my father's attorney for 30 years. He was in his late 60s now, precise, silver-haired, with the posture of a man who had built his life on discretion. His assistant, Marjorie, looked up as I entered. "Ms. Whitmore, we weren't expecting you." "I know," I said. "Is he available?" A moment later, his office door opened. "Ava," he said, surprise flickering across his face. "Come in." His office hadn't changed since I was a teenager waiting on leather chairs while my father finalized contracts. Mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a clock that ticked too loudly. He gestured for me to sit. "I assume this isn't a social call." I placed the opened envelope on his desk. "Jerry called this morning." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "And she told me she sold the Lake Forest house." He didn't react with shock. He reacted with irritation. "She what?" His tone was controlled but sharpened. "She claims she has the authority as his widow." Alden leaned back slowly. "Did she provide documentation?" "No, just confidence." A humorless breath escaped him. "Confidence is not a legal instrument." I held his gaze. "Tell me she couldn't do this." He folded his hands. "Ava, your father anticipated conflict." That word landed between us. "He established a revocable living trust 1 year before his death," Alden continued. "The Lake Forest property was transferred into that trust." I blinked. "Transferred?" "Yes. Why wasn't I told?" "Because your father instructed that the trust details remain confidential until necessary." My pulse steadied. "Necessary like now?" He gave a small nod. "Who is the beneficiary?" I asked, though I already knew. "You are," he said simply. "Sole beneficiary of the property. Jerry has no authority to sell it." The air shifted in my lungs. For the first time since that phone call, I exhaled fully. "She can't legally execute a sale," I clarified. "She can attempt to," Alden replied, "but it would constitute fraud." I almost laughed. "She said she sold it to teach me respect." Alden's brows drew together. "Respect is not a clause in probate law." "Is the trust airtight?" I asked. "Your father was meticulous. The deed transfer was recorded. The trust is valid. Any sale without trustee authorization is voidable." "And who is the trustee?" A slight pause. "You are." The room went very quiet. "My father made me trustee." "Yes." A complicated emotion rose in my chest, something between vindication and grief. "He protected you the only way he could," Alden added quietly. I stared at the trust documents he pulled from a folder, my name printed in black ink where it mattered. "If buyers believe they've purchased the house," I began. "Then we move quickly," he said. "We file notice, freeze the transaction, and prevent transfer of title." "How long do we have?" 10 days, he repeated, referencing my timeline. "Then we begin tomorrow." I sat back, the steel returning to my spine. "She thought she could humiliate me," I said, "publicly." Alden studied me carefully. "What do you intend to do, Ava?" I met his gaze without hesitation. "I intend to correct her." For the first time, he smiled faintly. "Your father always said you were the one with sense." Outside the window, Lake Michigan stretched vast and cold, but it no longer felt threatening. It felt like territory. And this time I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. The next morning, I pulled into the circular driveway of my Lake Forest house just as a silver Lexus was backing out and a woman in oversized sunglasses was saying, "Oh, this has such potential." Potential. I parked across the street instead of in the drive. Strategy before emotion. From that angle, I could see cardboard boxes stacked near the garage, my childhood life reduced to staging props. Through the front windows, strangers moved slowly, critically, like they were inspecting produce. I stepped out of my car, smoothing the lapel of my navy coat. A tall blonde woman holding a clipboard stood near the door, greeting a couple in their 40s. Realtor, perfect blowout, smile that never reached her eyes. I approached casually. "Open house?" I asked lightly. "Yes," she beamed. "Are you a buyer?" I smiled back. "No, I'm a cousin, in town from New York. I grew up here." Her expression flickered just slightly. "Oh, how lovely." Lovely wasn't the word she meant. "I heard it was on the market," I continued. "Thought I'd see what changes were being made." She hesitated. The property has already received strong interest. I'm sure it has. I stepped past her before she could object. The smell hit me first, not the lemon polish my father used. Not the faint cedar from the hallway closet. Fresh paint, artificial vanilla diffuser, erasure. A couple stood in the living room. "Do you think we'd knock out that wall?" the woman asked her husband. I took out my phone as if texting. Instead, I started documenting. The piano, my mother's old Steinway, had been shoved into the corner, half covered with a drop cloth. "Interesting remodel choices," I said aloud. The realtor reappeared beside me. "We've made minor adjustments for staging." "You moved a 900-pound piano for staging?" I asked sweetly. Her smile tightened. A man in a tailored coat wandered over. "Great bones," he said. "What's the asking?" 2.3, the realtor answered quickly. 2.3 below market. My father would have called that lazy negotiation. I moved toward the dining room. The built-in china cabinet doors were open, empty. "Where's the Lennox collection?" I asked casually. "I'm sorry," the realtor said. "The ivory with the gold trim, it was." "Sentimental," she glanced at her clipboard. "All furnishings are negotiable." Negotiable. I snapped a photo of the cabinet hinges scratched, recently removed. In the kitchen, two young women whispered. "I heard the widow's daughter was difficult," one murmured. "I heard she was cut out," the other replied. I paused behind them. "Funny," I said pleasantly. "I heard the widow didn't have authority." They stiffened and turned away. I continued through the house slowly, deliberately. Every displaced item. Every box labeled donate. Every attempt at rewriting ownership. Upstairs, the master bedroom had been stripped of my father's personal effects. No cufflink tray, no framed photos, no monogrammed robe, just neutral bedding and a staged orchid. I stepped into my old bedroom. The walls were painted a sterile gray. My closet stood open. Empty, my throat tightened, but not with grief, with calculation. The realtor appeared again. "Ma'am, if you're not a serious buyer." "Oh, I'm very serious," I said calmly. "About what?" "Documentation." She blinked. I met her eyes directly. "Has the title officially transferred?" "That's confidential." "Not if it's fraudulent." Her posture shifted. "Excuse me," I smiled, slow and controlled. "Tell your seller to check the deed history." And with that, I walked downstairs. On my way out, I snapped one final photo, her business card displayed neatly on the entry table. Outside, the cold air hit my face. I sat in my car and reviewed the images. Time-stamped. Geotagged. Evidence. Jerry thought optics would intimidate me. She thought strangers walking through my childhood home would break me. Instead, she'd just given me exactly what I needed. Proof. And as I started the engine, I murmured to myself, "Let's see how confident you are when the paperwork catches up." By noon, I was standing under the fluorescent lights of the Lake County Clerk's office, the air smelling faintly of toner and old paper, waiting for a man who had once bounced me on his knee at summer barbecues. Martin Delgado emerged from behind a counter stacked with files, his reading glasses low on his nose. "Ava Whitmore," he said, surprised. "I haven't seen you since." "My father's funeral," I finished gently. His expression softened. "I'm sorry, kid." "I need a favor," I said quietly. It's at the people in line behind me. "Let's step into my office." His office was barely larger than a supply closet, metal desk, filing cabinets, a framed photo of him and my father holding fishing rods. "What's going on?" he asked, closing the door. I placed 3 items on his desk: the trust document copy Alden had provided, a printed screenshot of the listing, and the photo of the realtor's card. "She's attempting to sell the Lake Forest property," I said. Martin frowned. "Jerry." "Yes." He adjusted his glasses and began scanning the trust paperwork. His brows rose. "This was recorded," he muttered. "Deed transfer into the Whitmore Living Trust, trustee designation." He looked up slowly. Yes. She doesn't have authority," he said firmly. "I know, so what do you need?" "I need time," I replied. 10 days before closing." Martin leaned back. "Has title officially transferred?" "Not yet." He tapped the papers thoughtfully. "If she signed a contract misrepresenting ownership, that's fraud." "I don't want drama," I said calmly. "I want control." He studied me carefully as if seeing my father in my posture. "There's an emergency motion you can file," he said finally. "Temporary restraining order against transfer of title pending trust verification." "How fast?" "If I flag it personally," he paused. 48 hours, maybe less." I need it today. Ava, she's conducting tour, removing property. Rewriting history, Martin's jaw tightened. Your dad always said you were the one with sense. I allowed myself the smallest smile. He told me that too. He stood abruptly. Give me the listing address and the agent's license number. I slid the paper toward him. He picked up the phone. Janice, I need a priority docket slot. Yes, today. He covered the receiver and looked at me. You'll have to sign an affidavit stating the trust terms and imminent risk of unlawful transfer. I'll sign whatever you put in front of me. He smirked. Spoken like a true executive. Within an hour, I was seated at a counter filling out formal language that felt both sterile and powerful. Reason for emergency filing, unauthorized attempt to transfer trust-held property, relief requested, immediate suspension of sale and exclusive legal control by trustee. Martin stamped the first page. The sound echoed. Once this is processed, he said, lowering his voice, no one can legally complete that sale without your signature. For how long? 10 days initially, enough to stop closing. 10 days. The exact timeline Jerry had smugly mentioned. I signed the final document. Martin took the stack and disappeared through a back hallway. When he returned, he handed me a certified copy with a raised seal. Effective immediately, he said. I ran my thumb over the embossed edge. Does she get notified? I asked. Oh yes, Martin replied with quiet satisfaction. Her agent too, I stood. For the first time since her phone call, something inside me felt steady, not angry, strategic. As I walked toward the exit, Martin called after me, Your dad would have been proud, Ava. I paused at the door. He taught me chess, I said, not checkers. Outside, the winter wind cut across the courthouse steps. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, I answered calmly. This is Ava Whitmore. A tight female voice responded. Ms. Whitmore, this is Caroline Hughes from Hughes Realty. We've just been notified of a legal hold on the Lake Forest property. Yes, I said evenly. There must be some mistake. There isn't. A sharp inhale on the other end. Our seller assured us. Your seller misrepresented ownership, I replied. All communication regarding that property now goes through me. Silence. Then, carefully, understood. The call ended. I slipped the certified order into my leather portfolio. 10 days of exclusive legal control. Jerry wanted a lesson in respect. She was about to receive one in writing. That evening, I met Liam Carter at a small brick-walled cafe in Evanston, the kind of place where the tables wobble slightly and the barista knows everyone's order before they speak. Liam had been my neighbor growing up. Freckled, stubborn, always climbing trees he wasn't supposed to. Now he wore a charcoal peacoat and the calm expression of a man who made a living noticing what others missed. He stood when I walked in. Ava Whitmore, he said with a crooked grin. You look like you're about to dismantle a corporation. Close, I replied, sliding into the booth across from him. Just a stepmother. He winced playfully. Ah, family litigation, my favorite genre. We ordered black coffee for him, a latte I wouldn't finish for me. I heard about your dad, he said more softly once the waitress left. I'm sorry. Thank you. A small pause settled between us, respectful but not heavy. So, he leaned forward, elbows on the table. What did she do? She tried to sell my house. His eyebrows shot up. Tried. I froze the transfer this morning. A slow whistle. That's my girl. I need more than a freeze, I said. I need leverage. His expression sharpened immediately. The teasing warmth shifted into professional focus. Define leverage. I pulled a small USB drive from my purse and placed it on the table between us. I want every property transaction, shell company, bank movement, and LLC registration connected to Jerry Whitmore for the past 2 years. He stared at the drive. That's comprehensive. She's been too confident, I continued evenly. People get that way when they think their foundation is invisible. You think she's moved money. I think she's staged authority before. He leaned back, studying me. This isn't just about the house, he said quietly. No, I admitted, it's about pattern. The waitress dropped off our drinks. Liam waited until she left again before speaking. Okay, I can pull corporate filings, county records, cross-reference business entities. If she's transferred assets, refinanced property, opened holding companies, there'll be a trail. I want the trail. He picked up the USB but didn't pocket it yet. What's on this? Photos from the house. Realtor info, timeline notes. He nodded approvingly. Organized rage, I respect it. I allowed myself the faintest smile. I don't do chaos. Good, he said, because this could get messy. I'm not afraid of messy, I replied. I'm afraid of being blindsided. He tapped the table once. You won't be. Silence lingered, not awkward, just loaded. Does she know you froze the sale? He asked. Yes, and I imagine she's adjusting. He laughed quietly. Understatement of the year. I wrapped my hands around my cup, though the latte had gone lukewarm. I need to know if this house is the first attempt, I said, or just the one she thought she could get away with. You think she underestimated you? I think she miscalculated. He watched me carefully. You're calm. I'm deliberate. That's more dangerous, he murmured. Outside, early evening light dimmed into navy. Timeline, I asked. Give me 48 hours for surface-level records, he replied. 72 if she's buried anything. And discretion? My middle name. It's actually Michael, I said dryly. He grinned. Fine, my professional ethic. I reached into my bag again and slid an envelope across the table. He didn't look inside. You don't need to pay up front. I do, I said. This isn't a favor. He studied me for a moment longer, then finally tucked both the USB and the envelope into his coat pocket. Whatever she's hiding, he said quietly, we'll find it. Nodded once. For the first time since my father's funeral, I felt something that wasn't grief or fury. It was alignment, pieces moving into place. As we stood to leave, Liam paused. You know, he said lightly, most people would have panicked. I did, I replied, internally. And externally, I scheduled meetings. He laughed, shaking his head. Never change, Ava. I stepped out into the cool air, the lake wind sharp against my cheeks. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was preparation. And I had a feeling Jerry had no idea how thoroughly she was about to be audited. That night, after confirming the property was legally frozen, I drove back to Lake Forest alone. The house sat in the dark, stripped of its staged visitors, quiet in a way that felt almost watchful. I parked in the driveway this time. I wasn't sneaking. I was reclaiming. The restraining order gave me authority, but what I needed now was clarity. My father used to hide a spare attic key behind the left shutter, third slat down. He once told me, never trust obvious hiding places. I found it exactly where he'd left it. The metal was cold against my palm. Inside, the house smelled faintly of paint and something else, disturbance. I locked the door behind me and moved without turning on many lights. Upstairs hallway, linen closet, pull-down ladder. The attic hatch creaked as it lowered, dust drifting in the beam of my phone's flashlight. I climbed. The attic felt untouched by Jerry's staging, insulated, quiet, insulated from performance. And there, beneath a moth-eaten quilt near the far wall, sat the trunk. Dark green metal, scratched corners. My father's old travel trunk from before he built the company. My pulse slowed. I knelt beside it and brushed off the dust. The latch resisted for a second, then gave. Inside were file folders, envelopes, a small leather-bound notebook, and on top of it all a flash drive. White label. Black ink, GW, do not trust. My breath caught. GW Jerry Whitmore, not Jerry Lawson, her maiden name. Whitmore was the name she'd married into. Carefully, I set the flash drive aside and opened the first folder, bank correspondence, highlighted sections, unusual transfers circled in red, a sticky note in my father's handwriting, review pattern, discrepancies increasing. Another folder contained contracts, LLC registrations in Delaware, Nevada, different entity names. But one signature repeated. Jerry Lawson, not Whitmore, separate, intentional. My father had been tracking something or someone. I opened the leather notebook. Short entries, dates, amounts. Discussed with G-Ray, refinancing. Unapproved withdrawal $48K. Must restructure trust. Protect A. My throat tightened. He had known, not everything, but enough. The attic felt smaller suddenly, heavier with implication. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The screen flickered. A single folder opened. Inside, scanned emails, PDF bank statements, wire confirmations, and one audio file dated 8 months before his death. I hesitated only a second before pressing play. My father's voice filled the quiet attic, low, controlled. I will not authorize that transfer, Jerry. Her voice followed sharper than I'd ever heard it. You're being paranoid. I'm being careful. You don't trust me. A pause. No, he said plainly. Not with this. Silence crackled between them. Then Jerry again, softer now. You're going to regret questioning me. The recording ended. The attic seemed to exhale. I stared at the laptop screen, my reflection faint against the black background. He had recorded her. He had archived evidence. He had labeled it clearly, "Do not trust." I sat back slowly, the weight of it settling into my bones. This wasn't about ego. This wasn't about grief. This was about sustained deception. And my father, meticulous, proud, stubborn, had realized it too late, or perhaps not too late, because he had left it for me. Every document in that trunk was dated within the last 2 years. Escalation, movement, preparation. I closed the laptop and gathered the most critical files into my leather portfolio. The flash drive went into my coat pocket. The rest I photographed carefully, every page, every note. Evidence. When I finally climbed down from the attic and locked the hatch behind me, the house felt different. Not violated. Guarded. Jerry thought this was about teaching me respect. She had no idea my father had already prepared the counterargument. And as I stood alone in the foyer, hand resting briefly on the banister he'd installed himself, I made a quiet promise. I wouldn't just stop her. I would finish what he started. 3 days later, at 10:42 a.m., my assistant's voice came through the intercom, tight with uncertainty. "Ms. Whitmore, your stepmother is here. She says she won't leave." Of course she wouldn't. "Send her in," I replied calmly, closing the folder that contained copies of the trust and the flash drive now safely duplicated twice. Glass doors to my office swung open, and Jerry Whitmore entered dressed in theatrical restraint, black sheath dress, oversized sunglasses, a silk scarf knotted like she was walking into a memorial instead of a corporate headquarters. She removed the sunglasses slowly. "You've embarrassed me," she said without greeting. I didn't stand. That would imply I acted without cause. Her lips thinned. "You filed a restraining order against your own family." "I filed it against an unauthorized property transfer." She paced once in front of my desk, glancing at the skyline behind me. "You always did love an audience," she muttered. "This is a private office, Jerry. You humiliated me in front of buyers, in front of my realtor. You attempted to sell an asset you do not legally control." Her eyes flashed. "I was your father's wife. And I am the trustee." The word landed hard. She stilled. "You think a piece of paper makes you powerful?" she asked coldly. "No," I said evenly. "Compliance does." She leaned forward, palms pressing against my desk. "You are being vindictive." I folded my hands. "If I were vindictive, I would have filed criminal charges already." That caught her off guard. "Charges," she repeated, "for fraudulent misrepresentation. Possibly wire fraud depending on how earnest money was handled." Color drained slightly from her face, but she recovered quickly. "You wouldn't dare." "I don't bluff." Silence pulsed between us. "You've always been jealous of me," she said suddenly, switching tactics. "Of what your father and I had." I almost smiled. "You mean the refinancing disputes, the secret LLCs, the recorded arguments?" Her expression flickered, just a fraction, but enough. "I don't know what you think you have," she said carefully. I reached into my drawer and slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. A highlighted excerpt from the trust. "Contest clause, any beneficiary who legally challenges the trust forfeits all residual interest." She read it, her jaw tightened. "If you attempt to contest my position as trustee," I said calmly, "you forfeit everything." "I am not a beneficiary," she snapped. "No," I agreed softly. "You're not." That hit harder. For the first time since she'd entered, she blinked. "You think this is over?" she asked, voice low. "No," I said. "I think it's clarified." She straightened slowly. "You're cold," she murmured. "I'm precise. You're going to destroy what's left of this family. I'm protecting what was mine to begin with." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Buyers are already talking," she said over her shoulder. "Neighbors too, there's gossip, you can't control that." "I don't need to control gossip," I replied. "I control documentation." Her hand tightened on the door handle. "You're not your father," she said sharply. "No," I agreed. "I finish things." She held my gaze for one long, charged second. Then she left. The glass doors closed with a soft click. My assistant peeked in. "Are you okay?" "I'm excellent," I said. Once alone, I allowed myself a slow exhale. The shift had happened, subtle but undeniable. For the first time, Jerry wasn't posturing. She was recalculating. And as I looked down at the duplicate flash drive resting on my desk, I realized something important. She still thought this was about stopping the sale. She didn't yet understand this was about exposure, and the board was finally tilting in my favor. The next morning at 9:03 a.m., my phone began vibrating before I'd finished my first coffee. It was Martin. "You need to get to the Lake Forest property," he said without preamble. "Now, what happened?" "Two moving trucks just pulled up." Of course they did. I drove north faster than I should have, the January air brittle and sharp against the windshield. As I turned onto my street, I saw them immediately, two white trucks idling at the curb, rear doors open like waiting mouths. And neighbors, clusters of them, watching. A young couple stood near the driveway, visibly agitated. The woman clutched a folder, the man was gesturing toward the house. "That's her," someone murmured as I stepped out of my car. The realtor, Caroline Hughes, spotted me and went pale. "Ms. Whitmore," she said stiffly. "What is this?" I asked evenly. The young man approached me first. "We were told we could begin moving heirloom pieces today," he said sharply. "Antique furniture was included in the agreement." "Included?" I repeated. "The Steinway, the dining set, the china collection," the woman added. "We paid additional consideration." My stomach turned cold. "Who told you that?" I asked. They exchanged a look. "Mrs. Whitmore," the man said. Of course she did. Before I could respond, a black county vehicle pulled up behind the trucks. Out stepped a uniformed court-marshal holding a manila envelope. The murmurs intensified. Caroline rushed toward him. "There must be a misunderstanding." "There isn't," the marshal replied flatly. "Temporary restraining order, transfer of title suspended, all access revoked pending trustee authorization." He handed a copy to Caroline, and another to the buyers. The woman's face drained. "We wired earnest money." "You'll need to speak to your seller," the marshal said calmly. "I am the trustee," I interjected, voice steady despite the eyes on me. "This sale was unauthorized." The man looked between us. "We were promised antiques under the table," he snapped. "She said they weren't part of the formal listing." Under the table, the phrase rippled through the small crowd like a spark. My neighbor Mrs. Donnelly gasped audibly. "You're saying she offered you estate property off record?" I asked carefully. "Yes," the woman replied, anger rising. "She said it was easier that way." The marshal's expression hardened. Caroline looked like she wanted the pavement to open and swallow her. I turned to the buyers. "I suggest you contact counsel immediately." "And you?" the man demanded. "I will provide full documentation of the trust to your attorney." The woman stared at me. "We uprooted our lives for this." "I didn't sell you this house," I said quietly. A local reporter's car pulled up at the end of the street. Of course it did. Small-town Lake Forest thrived on spectacle. "We're lifted," whispers intensified. "She sold her own daughter's house." "Fraud." "Estate dispute." The moving truck drivers began closing their doors, clearly uninterested in becoming part of a legal battle. The marshal addressed the crowd firmly. "This property is under court protection. Anyone entering without trustee permission will be trespassing." Silence fell. The buyers looked betrayed. Caroline looked terrified. And I felt something else. Exposure. Jerry hadn't just attempted a sale. For promised, she'd double-dealt, she'd grown reckless. My phone buzzed, unknown number. I answered without breaking eye contact with the scene in front of me. "You did this," Jerry's voice hissed through the line. "No," I replied calmly. "You did. You've made this public. You involved buyers. You humiliated me. You promised antiques under the table," I said quietly. Silence. Then lower, more dangerous. "You think you're winning. I think you're unraveling." She hung up. A reporter approached carefully. "Ms. Whitmore, is it true there's a dispute over estate ownership?" I met her gaze. "It's true there was an unauthorized attempt to transfer trust-held property," I said clearly, "and it has been legally suspended. Is fraud involved? I'll let the documentation speak." I turned and walked toward the front door, keys steady in my hand. Behind me, cameras clicked. Neighbors whispered. The buyers argued with Caroline. The trucks drove away. The scandal had detonated into public view. And for the first time, I realized something unsettling. Control wasn't just about paperwork anymore. It was about narrative. And the narrative was no longer private. It was spreading, which meant my next move had to be flawless. That afternoon, I sat at the far end of a long walnut conference table in Donna Hand's office on LaSalle Street, the city humming faintly beneath the windows, while legal pads and case files formed neat stacks between us. Donna Hands was in her mid-50s, sharp-eyed, impeccably dressed, and allergic to emotional decision-making. My father had respected her. That was reason enough for me. She adjusted her glasses and tapped the restraining order copy with her pen. You understand, she began calmly, that once we escalate this beyond civil correction, everything becomes discoverable. I assumed as much, I replied. That includes your financial records, business accounts, personal transactions. Any trust in your name. I held her gaze. I have nothing to hide. That's not the point, Donna said evenly. Litigation is exposure, even clean books get combed through. I folded my hands on the table. She promised buyers heirlooms off record. Donna nodded once. If proven, that's fraudulent inducement. I have audio of her arguing with my father about unauthorized transfers. Her pen paused midair. Audio? Yes. Recorded legally. He recorded it in his own home. Donna's eyes sharpened. That could matter. Silence settled between us, not heavy, just precise. Let's be clear, she said finally. Right now you've stopped the sale, that's containment. If you file a formal fraud claim, you're initiating attack. I'm aware. Are you prepared for countersuits, defamation claims, public narrative shifts? I thought of the reporter outside my house. I don't control gossip, I said quietly, but I can control facts. Donna studied me for a long moment. This is no longer about property, she observed. No, I agreed, it's about pattern. I slid a slim folder across the table, the copies from the attic trunk, highlighted wire transfers, LLC filings, notes in my father's handwriting. Donna opened it slowly. Her expression changed as she scanned the first few pages. These are not small discrepancies, she murmured. No, she turned another page. And this is all within 2 years. Yes. Donna leaned back, fingers steepled. If we pursue a fraud claim tied to attempted unlawful sale and potential misappropriation of estate-related assets, she said carefully, we trigger forensic accounting. That's what I want, she arched a brow. Most clients don't. I'm not most clients. A faint smile touched her lips. Clearly. She closed the folder and tapped it once against the table. There's risk, she said plainly. If your father's estate planning wasn't airtight in other areas, scrutiny could complicate matters. I'll take that risk. Why? The question wasn't legal, it was personal. I didn't answer immediately because the truth wasn't anger, it wasn't revenge. It's my father's name, I said at last. She used it as leverage. Donna nodded slowly. And your objective, she pressed, to expose her attempt, formally. Meaning, file the fraud claim, she exhaled softly. Once we file, she said, there is no quiet resolution, it becomes a matter of record. I don't want quiet. The room felt very still. Donna reached for a clean legal pad and began writing deliberately. All right, she said. We draft the complaint, attempted fraudulent conveyance of trust property, misrepresentation to buyers, potential concealment of asset transfers pending review. Her pen moved with measured certainty. You understand, she added, without looking up, this will draw attention. It already has. And if the spotlight turns toward you. I thought of the years I'd built my career brick by brick. I stand in it, I said simply. She stopped writing and met my eyes. Very well, Donna replied. Then we escalate. She turned the legal pad toward me. At the bottom, she said, you'll need to authorize filing. I picked up the pen. For a moment, I saw my father's handwriting in my mind, tight, deliberate strokes. Protect A. I signed my name beneath the complaint draft authorization. The ink dried quickly. Donna tore the page free and placed it in a separate folder. I'll have this filed within 48 hours, she said. Good. As I gathered my portfolio, she added quietly, power shifts are rarely clean, Ava. I'm not looking for clean, I replied. I'm looking for correct. Outside, Chicago's skyline reflected in the glass like polished steel. The scandal had already gone public. Now it would become official. And once paperwork entered the record, there would be no undoing it. That Saturday evening, I stood in the foyer of the Lake Forest house while Jerry paced near the fireplace, the winter light fading behind her like a curtain about to drop. She had insisted we speak privately. No lawyers, no audience. For once, she wasn't dressed for performance. No dramatic black, just a cream coat and visible fatigue. You've made your point, she said without looking at me. I wasn't making a point, I replied calmly. I was filing documentation. She exhaled sharply. Don't do that, don't talk like I'm a business problem. You treated the estate like one. Her jaw tightened. You've frozen accounts, filed claims, the buyers are threatening suit. Do you have any idea what that pressure feels like? Yes, I said, you sold my house. Silence. The fire cracked softly between us. She turned to face me fully. What do you want? The truth, I said. A humorless laugh escaped her. No, you want blood. I want accuracy. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Fine. Let's speak plainly. I waited. I will disappear, she said. I'll withdraw from the estate, publicly acknowledge a misunderstanding. No litigation, no forensic accounting. My expression didn't change. In exchange, I asked. A settlement, she said, a clean transfer, a confidentiality agreement. You dropped the fraud claim. There it was, not remorse, negotiation. You want silence, I said. I want this over. And the buyers, I asked. I'll handle them. With what funds? I asked evenly, her eyes flickered. You don't need to know that. I do if they came from the estate. She stepped even closer, voice tightening. You're risking everything, your career, your reputation. You think corporate boards don't watch headlines. I know they do. Then take the win, she snapped. You froze the sale, you humiliated me, take it. I studied her. For the first time I saw it, not arrogance, fear. You told me you sold the house to teach me respect, I said quietly. Her mouth pressed thin. Well, I continued, let's teach one. Her composure cracked. You're vindictive. No, I said, I'm thorough. You'll regret this, she warned. I already regretted trusting you. The words hung there, colder than the air outside. She searched my face for hesitation, found none. If you proceed, she said finally, voice low and trembling with restrained fury, you will destroy what's left of your father's legacy. I held her gaze steadily. No, I replied. I'm preserving it. I turned and walked toward the front door. Behind me, her voice rose, sharp, unraveling. You think you're untouchable, you're not Ava. I didn't turn around, I didn't answer. The door closed behind me with quiet finality. The negotiation phase was over. Next came judgment. 2 weeks later, I stood in probate courtroom 3B in downtown Chicago as the judge adjusted his glasses and called Whitmore Estate v. Whitmore. Jerry sat at the opposite table in a tailored gray suit, her expression carefully composed, but her fingers gripped the edge of the table too tightly. Donna leaned toward me. Ready? I've been ready, I said quietly. The buyers sat in the back row. A reporter, too. The air carried that specific tension only courtrooms hold, anticipation wrapped in silence. Donna rose first. Your Honor, she began smoothly, this case concerns an attempted fraudulent conveyance of trust-held property and misrepresentation to third-party buyers. She handed up the trust documents. Recorded 1 year prior to the decedent's passing, she continued. Ms. Ava Whitmore is the sole trustee and beneficiary of the Lake Forest property. Jerry's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client believed she retained spousal authority. Belief, Donna interrupted calmly, does not override recorded transfer of title. The judge examined the deed history. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, peering over his glasses at Jerry, did you review the trust before listing the property? Jerry straightened. I was under emotional distress after my husband's death. That wasn't my question. Silence. Donna placed another document before the bench. Additionally, Your Honor, we submit evidence of communications and financial records suggesting a pattern of unauthorized asset movement. Jerry's attorney objected. Speculation. Donna didn't flinch. We also have an audio recording. The courtroom stilled. My pulse remained steady. The recording played softly but clearly, my father's voice firm, Jerry's sharper, defensive. I will not authorize that transfer, Jerry. You're being paranoid. I'm being careful. The judge stopped the playback halfway through. That will suffice. He looked directly at Jerry. Mrs. Whitmore, this court finds that the Lake Forest property was held in trust at the time of listing. You had no legal authority to sell it. Her composure cracked just slightly. The attempted sale is declared void, he continued. All contractual obligations entered under misrepresentation are invalid. A quiet ripple moved through the courtroom. He paused. Furthermore, pending review of the submitted financial materials, this court orders Mrs. Whitmore barred from acting in any representative capacity over estate-related assets. The gavel struck. Sharp, final, Jerry stood abruptly. This is outrageous. Sit down, her attorney hissed. But it was too late, her voice echoed in the marble hallway as we exited. You think this makes you righteous, she snapped at me. You've destroyed everything. I stopped walking, turned. No, I said evenly. I ended it. Her mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time since this began, she had nothing left to leverage. Nothing left to perform, nothing left to sell. I walked down the courthouse steps into the cold Chicago air, cameras flashing lightly but not aggressively now. The narrative had shifted, not scandal, correction. Donna touched my elbow. It's done. I looked up at the skyline, steel and glass unshaken. Yes, I said quietly. It was done. The house was mine, my father's legacy intact. And Jerry out of moves. 3 weeks after the court ruling, I stood barefoot on the restored wooden planks of my back porch in Lake Forest, string lights glowing softly above a long farmhouse table set for 5. The house no longer smelled like staged vanilla. It smelled like cedar again, like memory reclaimed, not repackaged. Liam was the first to arrive, carrying a bottle of red wine. Please tell me this one is legally purchased, I said dryly as he handed it over. He grinned. Full documentation, I kept the receipt. Good, I'm strict about provenance now. Donna arrived next, crisp as ever but smiling in a way that suggested she allowed herself satisfaction only in rare, measured doses. You look different, she observed as she took in the porch. Less litigated, I offered. More certain, she corrected. Mr. Alden came slowly up the steps after her, pausing to glance at the garden. Your father planted those roses, he said quietly. I know, I replied. I almost let them die this winter. But you didn't. No, I said, I didn't. We took our seats as dusk settled in, Lake Michigan's breeze carrying just enough chill to justify the soft blankets draped over each chair. Dinner was simple: roasted chicken, fresh bread, a bottle of something celebratory, but the conversation easy, uncalculated. Liam raised his glass first. To trustees who don't flinch, he said. Donna lifted hers. To documentation. Alden smiled gently. To protection done properly. They all looked at me. I held my glass a moment longer before speaking. We don't rebuild what they broke, I said. We build better, Liam nodded. That should be framed. It already is, Donna replied lightly. It's called precedent. We laughed, real laughter, not sharp, not defensive. The house behind us stood solid and quiet, no longer a battleground, just home. Later, as plates were cleared and the sky deepened into navy, Alden lingered beside me near the railing. You know, he said softly, your father once told me he worried you were too independent. I arched a brow. Too independent. He meant he wouldn't always be able to shield you. I looked out toward the darkened yard. He didn't need to, I said. Alden studied me carefully. No, he agreed. He didn't. When the evening ended and the last car pulled away, I remained on the porch alone for a few quiet minutes. The scandal had faded from headlines. The buyers had been reimbursed. The trust remained intact, and Jerry gone from the estate entirely. Not through cruelty, through consequence. I rested my hand on the porch railing, the wood smooth beneath my fingers. Respect, I realized, isn't demanded, it's enforced. If this story reminded you that boundaries are not cruelty, but clarity, tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to protect something that was rightfully yours? And if you're watching from somewhere far from Lake Michigan tonight, let me know where. Because sometimes the strongest victories aren't loud. They're documented. And they're yours. 1 year later, I was standing in the rose garden behind the Lake Forest house with a copy of Chicago Modern Living folded under my arm and dirt on my hands. The headline read, Restored Legacy, Classic Architecture with Modern Authority. I almost laughed at that last word, authority. The photographer had captured the house at golden hour, windows lit warmly, porch polished, the piano back where it belonged near the front window. Not staged, lived in. A breeze moved through the roses, deep red blooms my father planted the year I left for college. I'd nearly lost them that first winter, distracted by court filings and conflict. Now they were thriving. Im's voice drifted from the porch. Are you admiring your media coverage again? I glanced over my shoulder. I'm admiring the landscaping. He walked down the stone steps, hands in his pockets. You know, he said casually, most people would have sold after all that. I'm not most people, I replied. That's becoming a theme. He reached for the magazine and skimmed the article. They called you a quiet force in preservation. Dramatic. Accurate. I crouched beside a rose bush, trimming carefully. After the court ruling, there had been attempts, small, indirect ones. A rumor here, a pointed comment at a charity event, but documentation outlasts whispers. Jerry had relocated out of state, quietly. No farewell announcement, no dramatic exit, just absence. And absence, I'd learned, can be its own resolution. You ever think about how close it came? Liam asked. Yes, I said honestly. But close isn't the same as lost. He nodded. The garden fell quiet again. I unfolded the magazine and reread the final paragraph. For Ava Whitmore, restoration was not about nostalgia, it was about stewardship. Protecting what matters requires precision, patience, and an unshakable sense of ownership. Ownership. Not possession, responsibility. I brushed soil from my palms and looked up at the house, my house. Not because I fought for it, because it was always meant to be protected. Respect, I murmured softly, more to myself than to Liam, isn't taught. He tilted his head. What is it then? Earned, I said, and enforced. The roses shifted gently in the wind. The windows reflected clear blue sky instead of scandal, and for the first time in a long time the word legacy didn't feel heavy. It felt steady. If you've ever had to stand your ground when someone underestimated you, tell me, where are you watching from and what did you protect? Because sometimes the most powerful move isn't revenge, it's refusal. And sometimes the house you save saves you back.